Welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Jacob Frankham. I'm the Associate Executive Director for Array Global Accreditation, and I'm excited because I get to welcome everyone. Usually it's Dr. Ray who gets to. I get to today because he is our presenter. And I've been really excited and looking forward to this workshop. I've heard from Dr. Ray several times and heard his discussions on curriculum, and they're always insightful, and I can guarantee you they're fun, and it's always something that you can learn as we improve our curriculum. So what I wanted to do first off is talk a little bit about our services and make sure that people are aware of our website. So many of you have probably been to our workshop site on our website. You can go and look at the upcoming workshop that we have. Our October workshop will be posted here soon after this workshop. But get on there, you can register. If you've already registered for a workshop at any time over the past 5 years since we've started doing this, you will still receive our newsletter. If you're not receiving our newsletter that has the outline of the workshop and has the link for the workshop, please let us know. Also, would like to point out the academic competitions. We put a link on the front of our website because we have so much interest in our academic competitions right now. And currently we're doing our writing contest. It's our Array Global Write Around the World contest. And this is a neat topic, and we've already received dozens of entries. The topic is an essay on my favorite teacher. So kindergartners through grade 12 can submit an essay. And obviously for the primary grades, kindergarten through grade 2, there's a little bit different expectation for them. But you can get right on to the entry form. You can read the rules of the contest. We do have cash prizes, and we do have certain expectations that need to be followed. The last day of submission is November 1st, and that'll be here before you know it. Winter's coming on and November will be here. So get your students in. This is a great way for students to be part of something that is global. We give certificates out to students. We will do an award ceremony for those who won. And like I said, we have cash prizes for grand prize winners and then first place winners too. So please get your students in on those competitions. And then check out our other services that we have. Our primary service is school accreditation. If your school wants to go through an excellent improvement process and then be recognized for that through the accreditation, the Array Global accreditation process, please reach out to us. Look at some of our other services that we provide, from certification services to consulting, to a sister school program, which is an awesome program. Your school can partner with a school in the United States and exchange letters, do Zoom calls, even come over and travel to the United States if you're interested in that. So welcome, everyone. I get the opportunity today to introduce Dr. Ray. And you know, one thing that I really like to show is this video that they made a couple of years ago when he was the alumnus of the year for a college in the United States. And I wanted to show this as a brief introduction for him.
Ray Lindley graduated from NNU in 1964 with a Bachelor of Arts in English and a double minor in Education and Speech. After graduating, Lindley immersed himself in education. He earned a Master of Science in Educational Administration with a minor in English at Portland State University in 1968, while beginning his career as a high school speech and journalism teacher. In 1973, Lindley earned his Doctorate of Education in Counseling and Guidance with minors in Psychology and Education. Over the next 43 years, Lindley remained dedicated to the advancement of education. He held various positions that included principal, superintendent, interim administrator at the Oregon Office of Degree Authorization, and director in the Office of Curriculum, Instruction and Field Services with the Oregon Department of Education. Lindley also served as an administrator for NNU for 7 years and as a member of the Board of Trustees for 11 years. In 2003, he was honored as the recipient of NNU's L.E. Wesche Outstanding Educator Award. In 2008, Lindley expanded his educational career by serving as Director of Accreditation for the Northwest Association of Accredited Schools. This organization later merged with Advance Ed in 2011, leading to their partnership with 34,000 schools and school systems across the United States and 70 nations internationally. This international role expanded even more when Lindley became the Executive Director of the American International Accreditation Association of Schools and Colleges in 2012. In this position, he manages the accreditation process for all schools and colleges in the association. Lindley explains, "Our association is here to help schools advance, with the goal that student improvement will result in school improvement, for all students to grow, to prepare them for the world that lies ahead." President Joel Pearsall adds, "NNU's mission statement reads that our goal is to enable each student to become God's creative and redemptive agent in the world." Ray is a graduate whose life has evidenced his activity as such an agent literally around the globe. Please help us welcome Dr. Ray Lindley as NNU's 2016 Alumnus of the Year.
So a few things as we introduce Dr. Ray. First, I don't think he's changed. Like, he looks exactly the same like he did when he was like a superintendent and principal and everything else. So, and second of all, I think those of you who have met Dr. Ray, either in person or virtually, you can tell that he cares about people. He cares about education. And not only do we learn from him as an educator and how to be a better educator, but we learn from him how to be a better person and how to best interact with others. And then also you saw that he's worked with a couple different accrediting bodies from Cognia, well, Northwest, and then Cognia, and then American International Accreditation Association. Now we're really excited to have Array Global Accreditation that's been in operation for about 5 years. And so we're excited to have his leadership, his guidance, his influence. And with that, it's excited to turn the time over to Dr. Ray to hear about curriculum development, which is so foundational to what we do as educators. So with that, Dr. Ray, I'll turn that over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Jake. I'm sorry I ever showed that video to you because you've shown that more than once. But thank you. It's a very nice honor. And hello, everybody. Greetings from beautiful Denver, Colorado, where I live. And I'm sure that it's not as warm as it is in many of the places where you exist or where you live, but it's a beautiful day here. Tomorrow, September 22nd, is the first day of fall weather. And our prediction is that it will be fall weather here, heavy rain expected and so forth. So one of the things about Denver, Colorado is if you don't like the weather, wait 15 minutes and you'll get a new set of weather. It changes regularly. So welcome everybody, and I'm excited about today's topic, and I thank Dr. Jake for helping me figure out the nuances of sharing. And so I'm going to share right now, and I believe
It's up and running. You got it.
It's up and running.
Excellent.
We're okay.
Yep.
Okay, so today we're talking about curriculum, scope and sequence, integration, and continuity. We're going to spend most of our time today on scope and sequence because that is the essence of the whole accreditation process. But I thought it'd be fun to share this one slide that I've used before in other presentations so that we understand who you as teachers or we as teachers, what we face. And found this several years ago. I thought it was kind of interesting. Today's teachers have to be comedians. They have to be circus performers, 20% educator and 10% parent. And I'm sure those of you who have taught for a while understand the different roles that you have to play. And if we really do our job as we need to, we have to understand that we have to fulfill these various responsibilities. For instance, just a couple of years ago or 3 years ago during COVID, we had to act differently as teachers because we were dealing with, number one, a pandemic that had sidelined many people, but also in many cases we had to deal with an educational system was basically online, and we had to really adapt ourselves. So my whole reason for pointing this out is we have many roles as a teacher. Today we're going to be talking about curriculum. Now, the one thing I want to say first of all is that curriculum instruction should not be used interchangeably. Curriculum is the what we do, instruction is the how. And let's not mix those up, because we will spend a lot of time talking about the how we do it, how we can perform as teachers and educators. But today we're going to be talking about the what. What is it that we do? I think the next thing that we need to be very careful about understanding is curriculum is more than a textbook. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit later, about the use of textbooks. But remember this, and for any of you where I've been in your school, if I say, could you tell me about your curriculum? And if your answer is, oh, well, we use, and then blankety blank, the name of a publisher. No, that's not your curriculum. That's a resource to teach the curriculum. And I caution you that any textbook that you use is a resource. The curriculum needs to be developed other than the textbook. And for a textbook publisher to say, well, here's everything you need to know, and you do this and follow this textbook, everything your students need to know is in here. No, it's not. And so please understand, it's a resource to help teach the adopted curriculum. And we're going to be talking in just a little bit about the adopted curriculum. So here's what curriculum really is. It's knowledge and skills the students are expected to learn. Now, please note that the word skills is there also. Knowledge, yes. We know that there is a certain amount of knowledge that students have to learn, because before you can proceed to the next step, you have to have some basic knowledge, and the knowledge increases as the students' learning increases. Curriculum is also a unit and a lesson plans that teachers teach. And again, we're going to be talking about how the units and lesson plans are put together, because that's what you as teachers, or we as teachers, use to deliver the curriculum. And we can talk, as I said, a lot about delivery methods and how to improve our opportunities as teachers. But the basis of curriculum is a unit and a lesson that's based on the scope and sequence that we're going to talk about. Curriculum is also assignments. And let's not forget that when we give an assignment, we have to understand that assignments are a part of the curriculum, and they should be listed, or they should be given as part of the curriculum, and the reason for an assignment should enhance or embellish the curriculum. So it's a practice that will hopefully reinforce what the curriculum is. Materials, videos, presentations, and readings used in the course. And one of our participants has mentioned the technology. Curriculum is also technology, because in the world we live in today, and especially for those of you who have been exposed to artificial intelligence, well, unfortunately, that's part of curriculum also, because one of the things we have to do is help our students understand the importance of technology and how it is involved in the curriculum. If we deny technology, we're denying the basis on which most of these students live, because you know, and I know, that when they leave your classroom, they're either going to be on a cell phone like this, or they're going to be on a computer or a pad or something. So technology is definitely part of the use of curriculum. And also a part of the curriculum is tests and methods used to evaluate student learning. And that's an important part of curriculum also, because we have to understand, not just for the student performance to see how well they did it, but we understand by giving tests and evaluations, we understand if we are coming across as teachers so that students can understand and they're learning the curriculum that we are trying to deliver. then I say one mistake we make. Please be careful. We spend a lot of time talking about teaching styles and how to improve our teaching methods. But the real success in teaching is not the method we use, although that's very important, but how well the students are learning. And if students are not learning, we need to adjust how we're delivering the curriculum, or we need to adjust the process by which we're developing the curriculum. And one of the things that we talk about in Array Global is that the success of a school is not how good the building is, how well educated the teachers are, how nice we are to students, how we involve the parents, how we have good policy procedures, but are the students learning? And if students are not learning, we're wasting our money and our time. We need to find a way to have that develop. Now, found this recently. I wanted to include this because our partners at Middle States Crediting Association, for which we have a wonderful partnership, put this on their website, and I thought, wow, here's staggering. Found from the Walton Foundation, only 49% of students say their schoolwork positively challenges them. Think about that, 49%. Only 40% say that their schoolwork aligns with what they do best. What do your students do best? Can we align the curriculum to help them demonstrate what they do best? And then here's the scary one. Only 33% or less of students strongly agree they are having each of these engaging experiences. Those are statistics that we need to keep in mind as we work on the development of not only our curriculum, but our teaching style and our whole educational system. Another mistake we make, be careful. A curriculum framework is not the work of one teacher or teachers at one grade level. It must be the work of a cross-grade level of teachers, that particular subject from all grade levels. Very, very carefully. You as an individual teacher do not develop your curriculum. That's a school-wide project. And one of the biggest mistakes we make in education is we find examples where people will go off on their own and think, well, you know, my students need to know this, but it needs to be part of the process. If you're a third grade teacher, you should be teaching approximately the same schedule as other third grade teachers are. Or if you're teaching in any grade level, you ought to be teaching at approximately the same level or same location that the other teachers are, because we do students a disservice. And one of the things that we find sometimes in teacher evaluation is that students in one particular teacher's classroom are learning at a higher degree of ability than teachers at the same grade level. So we ask ourselves, what's wrong? What's happening? Why is it happening here and not there? So let's understand, and we're going to talk about this now. How do we develop the curriculum?
So Dr. Ray, just not to interrupt, but does that mean that teachers get to be part of the process? Ferris asked that. In our times, is a teacher supposed to be a curriculum developer as well, or is it just for others to take care of? I thought that was a good question.
Yeah, thanks for the question. If teachers aren't involved and they don't feel that they're an integral part of the curriculum, how in the world will we expect them to follow and to live with it? Because things that I have ownership in, I tend to promote better than things that are given to me. And we all have things that are given to us. The government gives us a lot of expectations, and we say, okay, we'll do it. But if the teachers are not involved, and one of the things that Dr. Jake and I have been working on, the reevaluation of all of our standards, is that it does have to have an instructional leader. There needs to be an administrative leader to cause this to happen. But if teachers aren't involved, the curriculum is not meaningful. So definitely the teachers who are in there. And it doesn't mean all teachers. It becomes, you know, if you are in a school where you have 50, 60, 70 teachers, it doesn't make sense that all the teachers are involved initially. But it is the cross grade level section of teachers, somebody from primary, somebody from intermediate, somebody from upper middle, somebody from high school, all of these people, because everybody has to be part of it. And the reason this is important also is because teachers at the primary level, if they've been part of the development of the curriculum and they know what the outcome is, and we're going to be talking about it here in just a moment, the scope, if they know what that scope is, what students are expected to know, be, show, do at the end of grade 12, even though teaching grade 1, 2, or 3, they know what's coming. And so that's why it's so important for teachers at all grade level. And of course, once this initial group of teachers has done their work, it needs to be shared with all of the teachers. So other teachers have input. But I found in many cases where you have a group organization, and everybody wants to be heard. And sometimes somebody will say something that was just like somebody just said a minute before, but I want you to hear the way I say it. So that's why I have to be careful. Start with a small group of cross grade level teachers and at least one administrator, curriculum leader, and then spread it out after you've done the initial work and get input from all of your teachers. So here are the elements, and we're going to be speaking mostly about scope and sequence, and we're going to give you some practice here in just a few moments. Ferris, you hope you appreciate this. We're going to give you some practice, something that you can do. Scope and sequence, we're going to be talking about that. We'll talk a little bit about integration and continuity, but the real purpose today is to talk about scope and sequence. So, scope. The scope is best defined as the breadth and the depth of content to be covered in a curriculum at a given time, a week, a term, a year, or over a student's life that you do in a given period. So we're going to be talking about scope at given times here in just a moment, but we're also talking about scope. If we expect students to know a particular thing by the time they are graduated from high school, or by the time they leave our school, if you're elementary school or a middle school only, what do we expect that scope to be? But always keeping in mind what the scope is at the end. So when the students leave formal education, we know what it is they're expected to learn. We're going to be talking about that in just a moment. Now, sequence, on the other hand, if I can get this to move, is the order in which the content is presented to learners over time. Respect to the other parts of the curriculum. Get that one. Respect to the other parts of the curriculum, because you don't learn math in a vacuum. You don't learn science in a vacuum. You don't learn English in a vacuum. You don't learn social studies. You have to understand the breadth of the things that you're teaching so that it does presented with learners over time. So now let's talk about usually prescribed in a matrix or a chart. And by the way, we had a question asked about curriculum mapping. And curriculum mapping is a chart. And if you really get to the point where you need to map it and make sure that you have all the educational goals here and then map to make sure that they're following through on all of these areas, that's curriculum mapping, but it's all part of curriculum development. And we need to understand curriculum development. Then we can map it and make sure that we're getting all of the idiosyncrasies of this. Is scope is simply the what and the where, the when of knowledge and understanding. That's scope and sequence. So now, together, we are going to learn I'm sorry, the screen is being blocked off. My screen is being blocked off here.
We can see it just fine though, Dr. Ray.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna play with one now. Now, I want to give you a scope. Now, as Dr. Jake said or he didn't say, but in the video, I started this business as a teacher of English. That's what my bachelor's degree was in. And so the example we're going to go through today in going scope and sequence is for writing. And by the way, when we were doing the announcement about the writing contest that's coming up, I thought perfect timing, because we're going to talk about writing. So here's an example, and we're going to work on this together. The scope. What do the end what do we expect students to be able to do at the end of grade 12 when they leave to go on to college, university, to work, to military, or whatever? Now, here's a daunting, daunting expectation. Read this one. By the end of grade 12, students will write a descriptive essay that analyzes several historical records of a single event, examines critical elements of that event, and how it applies to today's life. Wow, that's a big job. By the end of grade 12, this is the scope. And we expect students who leave grade 12 to be able to do this. But you don't do that starting in grade 12. That's why we get into sequence. So when we get into sequence, we're going to see what leads up to this in grade 12. So the question that we have to ask ourselves in grade 12, when the students enter grade 12, what do we need to do to take care of the sequence and help them understand the sequence that they've learned way back early in their educational career? So what is it? What do we expect students to be able to show? Then we plan the scope and sequence for grade 12 based on what they've already learned. So let's go way back now. So if this is our scope, let's talk about sequence. By the end of kindergarten, students will know the alphabet and write, moving from left to right, from top to bottom. Pretty simple, right? But what is the sequence that we're going to use in grade 1 or grade kindergarten to get to this end? We expect them to know by the end of kindergarten to write, moving left to right and top to bottom. And by the way, the examples that I'm using today are simply ones that I've created from my experience. You might find different sequences or you might find a different scope, and that's okay. I'm just using the one with which I'm familiar and be able to help you get the process. So this is the end of kindergarten. Okay, if that's the case, what do we expect by the end of first grade? By the end of first grade, now remember, they already know the alphabet. They already know left to right, top to bottom. Now we're going to have students by the end of first grade spell 3- and 4-letter words correctly. That's good. Now they're going to use that alphabet and use that left to right, top to bottom, and they're going to spell 3- and 4-letter words correctly. We as teachers will give them these words. We as teachers will try to give an example of these words so that they understand. Then we're going to go on to second grade. So by the end of second grade, we're already writing words. Students will write a friendly letter. Okay, now it's not just writing words, but now we're going to help them write a letter, complete with the date. This is September 21st, 2024. The salutation, dear friend, dear grandma, dear grandpa, the salutation, the body. I wanted to tell you that I'm in second grade now, and we're studying writing in my class, and we're learning that we have to write a friendly letter. So I'm writing this to you. Closing, sincerely, or forever yours, or with love, or whatever, and then sign my name. We're going to teach students now. Do you see how we're progressing in this learning? We're going to get to 12th grade, but we're going to go step by step to get there. Third grade. By the end of third grade, students will write a description of something that happened to them, including people, places, times, and experiences. Now they're going to start using that initial information. Yesterday, when I was on the playground, a friend of mine was on the swing, and we were talking about how high we could go on the swing. And my friend, who is Jacob Frankham, he said he could go higher than I could. And we were on the swing on the playground, and it was recess time, and we had a great time. Wow, that would be a great thing for a third grade student to write. Pretty simple, yes. But remember, this is third grade. Do you see how we're progressing now? Now we go to fourth grade. We go to fourth grade and we say, what do we expect by the end of fourth grade? A summary of a selection read in class, including the main ideas and most significant details. Here, the teacher has an opportunity to read a story to the class. Teacher stands in front of the class. I'm going to read you a story today. And when I am through, I want you to write a summary of the story. In other words, tell me what happened in this story. What were the main ideas? And what were the most significant details? Do you get it? Students are now learning to hear something read to them. Everybody's hearing the same story. They can write down what the main ideas are. So it gives students an opportunity to make sure that they're listening carefully and they're able to write clearly the main ideas and the most significant details. 5th grade. By the end of 5th grade, students will write a persuasive composition in support of a proposal that students want to make, including evidence to support the proposal. Here's one I read when I was superintendent. Students wanted to have more candy machines in the lunchroom. Okay. They wanted to have the availability to read candy machines. Here's a great persuasive composition. I want to write to say why I think we need more candy machines in the lunchroom. That's a persuasive composition in support of proposal. And I think other students want to make that. And here's the evidence. I did a survey of 20 people in my classroom, and all of them said they would like to have more candy. Some said they'd like to have more chocolate. Some said they'd like to have more peanuts. Some said they'd like to have more coconut. But here is what I'm putting together. See how we're progressing in what students can do now. We're still writing. 6th grade. Now students will write a statement to identify and properly use indefinite pronouns, him, her, he, she, present perfect, past perfect, and future perfect. That's I have eaten, I had eaten, I will eat. And students are now learning some more about grammar because they're able to use, first of all, indefinite pronouns, present perfect, past perfect, and future perfect. And we can tell students, we want you to use all of these. Guess what? Somewhere in 6th grade, the scope and sequence in 6th grade is going to have to lead students to understand what indefinite pronoun, what present perfect is, what past perfect is, future perfect, verb tenses, and ensure that verbs agree with subjects. I was the one who they said, or I was the one. Make sure that the pronoun agrees with the subjects, or that the verbs agree with the subjects. 7th grade, students will write a fictional story. Wow, now they're already writing story with major and minor characters. I want to write a fictional story about the ogre or the giant who avoided all of the other giants, and he didn't like the other giants very well, and he did a job to try to eliminate all the other giants, and he had this one giant who gave him a real tough time, and he lived in the land of Oz. And can you imagine the students' ability to create in their own mind a fictional story? And the teacher, again, has to lead them into that. In 7th grade, there needs to be a scope and sequence to lead to the end of 7th grade. Then we get to the 8th grade. Students will write with detailed evidence an example of 2 points of view about the value of subject assigned by the teacher. So here the teacher is going to say, let's talk about the value of eating candy versus eating fruits and vegetables. Eating candy versus fruits and vegetables. What are the points of view about the value of eating candy? And what are the points of view about about eating fruits and vegetables? And the students then have to be able to put evidence of these things, an example of those points about the value, and be able to differentiate between the two. Now we're getting up there now. That in the 9th grade, students will write an expository essay about a current event with facts and opinions about the background and causes of that event. You know, here in the United States right now, we're going through a presidential contest. Maybe that would be something that students in the US an expository essay about a current event. I heard the candidate say this. Maybe in your community, it's something different. It's probably the possibility of something that's current in your particular country. Is the value something that they want to write about? And the opinions of two sides of the same story. So that would be 9th grade. 10th grade. See how we're getting up there. Students will write an essay to support, excuse me, we just went one too far. Students will write an essay to support a significant understanding of literary work. Guess what? Now they're getting back to their reading, just as the teacher earlier read them the same. So there are probably some assigned readings that will have happened leading up to the significant understanding of literary work. I know in 10th grade, when I was in 10th grade, we had to read a book called Silas Marner. I don't know if you've all read that book or not, but a book called Silas Marner. And if I had to write a significant understanding of that literary work, I better have read the book carefully. And so now I'm writing something about something else in the curriculum. The 11th grade, students will write an essay that draws comparisons between an incident and broader themes that illustrate important beliefs or generalizations. For instance, yesterday we had a heavy, heavy rainstorm. The broader theme might be climate. And so students have to differentiate between that incident, the rainstorm, and the climate to illustrate how important the generalizations. Now, guess what? We're going to get to grade 12, and I hope you recognize this. It's the very same thing we started with. This is the scope. By the end of grade 12, students will write a descriptive essay that analyzes several historical records of a single event, examines critical elements of that event, and how it applies to today's life. Wow. When students get to the point where they can do that, my dog is causing some issues, and I apologize for that. He doesn't like me in here in the office with all this. If any of you have dogs, you can understand this.
It's actually
Okay.
hard to hear, Dr. Ray, but there are a few questions about the scope and sequence, or
Okay.
comments mainly about the topics that you're going over in every grade level. And I've just mentioned in the chat that this is just an example on how to develop a scope or sequence. This is just an example of maybe how a school would meet one specific standard. It's not the entire content of that grade level and focus of what needs to be written.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Well, then you're just in language arts.
Yeah.
The whole curriculum in language arts will probably include reading, writing, speaking, and one we often forget, listening. We need to teach students how to listen, and we can make that. So yes, this was one segment of the language arts curriculum, and I use that as an example. You're going to do the same thing for every curricular area that you teach in your school, but this was used as an example to show you how you develop level by level by level what students are learning. So I did that for that reason, so that you could understand how you develop it. Now, I thought it was important to list this in here. So how do you develop the scope for a particular subject? Number one, I would say check the website for states in the United States and search for the curriculum standards. For instance, when Dr. Jake and I first worked on developing the curriculum standards, we looked at several states in the US. And if you go on their website and you name any state, I think California is used a lot, Michigan is used a lot, West Virginia is used a lot. My background is from Oregon, so I use that one a lot. Jake's background is in Montana and Idaho. So, but check in there and find out what they say are the key elements of curriculum by grade level. Here are the things you should know. Number two, review several textbooks, not just one. And I put this in here, and I should have put it in big red letters. Remember, you are the consumer. You develop your scope and sequence based on these things, and you show it to the publisher and say, Here's what we teach in this school. How do your materials help us teach this? Don't fall into the trap of having a publisher hand you a textbook and say, here's everything you need to do and know. They might be close, but if it doesn't match your curriculum, in fact, here in the United States, most of our states require this. They require that the state develop the curriculum, and then the publishers have to submit proposals as to how their materials help you teach this. And it's probably not all going to be in one textbook. It's going to be in handouts. It's going to be online. It's going to be in other materials that are provided, but you have to have the materials to demonstrate what you're teaching. Visit colleges and universities in the content area. Some of the best education you can get is to go, for instance, let's take English, since we've talked about writing today. What about going to the college and university in your area and talking with the English professors and say, when students come into your college or university, how well prepared are they? What are some things that we could do in our school to help them prepare better for college? How about jobs? When students leave school and they go into work, how about going to the employers and saying, what are the skills that you wish students would know better when they come to this job? So go to people outside beyond you. Review the external tests. Every curricular accredited school has to review external tests to see how you're doing in comparison to others. So if your external tests are showing that your curriculum or that your students are not performing at the same level, you have to ask why. What are we doing? And another one I thought of just this morning, and I added it, talk with your graduates. When I was high school principal, at the first very graduation practice before the graduation ceremony, I handed a card out to every student. And on this card was write your name, write your current address and telephone number, and then please write the name and address of anybody who will always know where you are. Usually they would write a parent and so forth. The reason is because we wanted to contact those people, probably not the first year they're out of school, but maybe the second or third year. What did you find in your education that helped you? What did you miss in your education? Those are important things to make sure that you add to your curriculum. So
another idea, Dr. Ray, that was mentioned in the comments was the guidance counselor. That's a great way.
The guidance counselor, yes. So as I said, we're going to talk I'm sorry, were you through, Dr. Jake?
Yep.
Okay. So it's integration, relates to different strands of a piece of curriculum, relating to other things occurring in the students' lives, either in school subjects or out school. We had a couple of assignments that talked about writing something outside of the classroom. We had an assignment. Oh, you know what? I used to ask this question, can you teach English in a math class? You bet you can. Can you teach math in an English class? You bet you can. Because in an English class, you can say, I want you to go measure the length of the football field or the soccer field and measure how long it is. And then I want you to write a statement as to how this compares to the length of a volleyball court or a basketball court. And so so you are using math. So yes, integration can involve more than one subject area. Then the other thing, continuity. Hopefully we have given some obvious examples today of continuity, and future learning relates in terms of cumulative effects. We know that in kindergarten, they had to start with putting the alphabet together and writing from left to right, top to bottom. So yes, continuity is extremely important. Now, with that, we're going to practice. Now, here's what I want you to thinking about. We need to put a new carpet in this room, in the room where you are right now. You need to put a new carpet. So I'm going to ask you to just write in the chat, and Dr. Jake is going to monitor this and we're going to know what we're going to develop, what we need to know about how to lay a carpet in this room. Now, you're not teaching carpet laying in your school, I assume, but we're using this as an example. What are some things we need to know about laying a carpet in this room? So what is the, referring to the early definition of curriculum, give a brief description of what is included in laying a carpet. Put your ideas in the chat room. What do you need to have a description of laying the carpet in a room? Right in the chat room. What do you see? Dr. Jake, tell us what you find.
Yeah, we'll probably give them a minute to do that. The measurements of the carpet, the measurements of the room.
Measurements of the
Someone
room.
wrote, I'm only teaching English, but guess what? That's just where we talk about integration a little bit.
Yeah. But
Yeah, alliance with the interior.
okay.
That's good. And anyone on Facebook can post too. We have the area of the room. The area of the room would be math. Your favorite color would be English, and the material would be science.
Yeah.
Monad says dimensions, alignments with room, decorations. The taste of the people as it really affects.
So we've got several examples there of the things that ought to be involved in the curriculum. So now let's talk about scope. What's the first thing maybe we should put in the scope of a particular laying a carpet? What's the very first thing that we should probably do?
Figure out the why or the where.
Okay, the why or the where. Why are we laying a new carpet? That's going to be part of the scope.
Yep. You got to take out the old carpet first.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. So now let's talk about sequence. Okay, we've decided, we've taken out the old carpet. We've decided why we needed to have it and where we're going to put it. What's the very first thing we should do if we're going to lay a new carpet in the room?
Make sure it's empty and prepared.
Make sure it's empty and prepared.
And make a measurement. Jane writes.
And probably part of the sequence, we're learning what it is to be prepared.
Yeah. And then try to figure out what kind to put in.
Okay,
Hannah writes, looking at the theme of the room and make a decision.
Do we want a shag carpet?
Yeah.
Do we want a hard surface? I don't know what they call them, but that's the scope, the sequence. How? Now, how are we going to integrate this with other areas of learning? A new carpet. How do we integrate that? Dr. Jake, you've already listed some. I think we're listed by the attendees. You know, how are we going to integrate this with other things? Well, measurement is going to be math. The type of material is going to be science. Those kinds of things. We're integrating this, and then the continuity. So we know the continuity. We have to maybe first of all, decide why, then we're going to measure, and then we're going to decide what, and then we're going to decide how, and that's continuity. Now, apply that to the whole area of curriculum and how we do that. So we get into
for Dr. Ray, there are a few good comments here. Mrs. Fatima wrote that maybe we should list out the vocabulary that people might know, especially if they're English learners. I thought that was a great idea.
Yeah, exactly.
When Salma wrote that writing a descriptive essay of how to install carpet. Yes, a lot of good thoughts on this.
Good. Well, let's move on. Our time is going fast here, and we have quite a bit to cover. Standards and benchmarks, and so we're going to do these. You might choose in your school to do benchmarks. For instance, you might do it at each grade level, as we did earlier, or you might have a benchmark at grade 3, grade 6, grade 9. So by the end of grade 3, everything leading up to that, and that might benchmark if you want to do a benchmark in your development of your curriculum. But
you mean like a test after grade 3?
It could be a test. It could be a test. It could be, we take all those things that we had earlier in kindergarten through grade 3, and we might find that they're better to teach as a group and work on all of those at once. Especially we got under those 10 through 12 benchmarks that we looked at. They might be better taught as a group and see how they relate to each other. But the important thing is that by end of grade 12, they have reached the scope that we decided. Then we want to talk about just a sample, language arts. Students will demonstrate knowledge of sentence structure by consistently writing sentences with proper spelling, subject, verb, agreement, and proper punctuation. Wouldn't you be glad if at the end of grade 12, your students could master that? Here's another sample standard. How will they demonstrate? Well, the number of examples they use, correcting the works. And by the way, don't negate the fact that students can correct each other's works. They can learn from each other a lot. Show them examples from their readings. There's another integration, consistency over time, and other ways to demonstrate their learning. Then we go on to, assuming that the standard for grade 9, the students of grade 9, what is the scope that we listed for grade 9? What are the sequential pieces they have to know before we can do that? How can the integration of learning to write proper sentences be made with other subjects? And we talked about that a bit. And how can 9th grade teachers demonstrate continuity with previous learning and future learning? And by the way, let's make a point here. When students enter any grade level, you're going to have some students who are at that grade level in their ability. You're going to have some students who are above that grade level in their ability, and you're going to have some students who are not at that grade level. And that's where we have to understand the continuity. If the 9th grade teacher knows what should have happened in 8th grade, that 9th grade teacher can tailor the instruction or the assignments to that student. And the other end of that is if at the 9th grade, the teacher knows that what's happening in 10th grade or 11th grade, the teacher can help move that student ahead because the student has already experienced that, or excuse me, has already experienced the 9th grade and move on to future learning. And I wouldn't worry about going beyond 12th grade because students are that advanced usually can find new challenges. The teacher can give new challenges to get them to the next grade level. So then we go into the Common Core. Just as much as I don't like to hear when I go into a school, well, our curriculum is, and then the name of a textbook publisher. I don't like to hear, well, we use Common Core. At its essence, Common Core is very good, but it's more a process than a product, and we need both. So here's the process: create, collaborate, communicate, critical thinking. Great process. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not enough. It helps students master increasingly difficult problems. It also helps teachers increase their students' proficiency level. But you notice these are all do things, they're not accomplish. And that's why we need standards to go along with Common Core. Common Core will teach you how, but standards will teach you what. So the Common Core is very important. And then we go on to, if you want to know more about Common Core, and by the way, I encourage you all to access this workshop because here's a website you might want to look at to know more about Common Core standards because they're very big. So we can talk about demonstrating scope and sequence in math and reading. Now, before, remember in English, we talked about writing. Now so develop an outline of what happens at each grade level. Where do you start? This is where your team gets together. You have primary teachers, upper primary, middle school, high school. Let's do a sequence of what happens at each grade level so that all people understand what is happening. So if we have this at the end of grade 12, students will demonstrate algebraic solutions of problems in various content areas, including solution of systems and quadratic equations, logarithmic and exponential fractions. Wow, that's a big assignment. But we don't start there. We start way down to make sure that students understand the value of numbers and the value of addition and subtraction. And they get into multiplication and division, and they get into fractions, and they get into all these things leading to this. We have to understand what happened before we can get them to what's happening in grade 12. Grade 12 reading, students will apply their knowledge of word origins to determine the meaning of new words and use these accurately. By the end of grade 12, students will trace the etymology. Boy, try to use the word etymology in front of a 3rd grade student, and they'll probably laugh at you because but hopefully by this time. Now look at the significant terms in science and history. Integration. We're doing this in reading. And now we're referring to science and history. Grade 12, students will apply knowledge of Greek, Latin, and Anglo-Saxon roots. Big assignment, but they don't start there. This is where they go. And if that first grade or kindergarten teacher knows eventually where they're getting there, sometimes the students will say, like, why do I have to learn this? Well, because next year you're going to study this particular subject, and you need to get up there. They're not going to understand all that. Students will discern the meaning of analogies encountered, analyzing specific comparisons, relationships, and inferences. Again, I'm rushing through these because our time is getting close here. Remember the questions you had to answer for laying a new carpet. The same questions apply to math and reading or any subject area. So those are the questions, and that's what we want to talk about with curriculum development. Hopefully that has led you through a process that will help you understand. So at Array Global, here's our mission: partnering with institutions in the improvement efforts to ensure students are prepared for a global society. And remember, we at Array Global believe that the real test of the success of a school is how well are students learning at every grade level. So I think, Dr. Jake, that's the end of the formal presentation. If we want to take any questions at this point, I'm certainly open to that.
Yeah, maybe what we should do, Dr. Ray, is if you want to end with your words of wisdom, I will then post the survey in the chat, and then we can take some questions from there, because I think we do have a couple questions, because this is a very excellent presentation with a lot of excellent information in this. So maybe I'll turn the time back to you if you have some words of wisdom.
Oh, I do. And, you know, I found this one
us.
the other day, and I shared it with Dr. Jake. Hear this one. Here's my words of wisdom for the day. And it's a quotation which I found. Every maker of video games knows something that the makers of curriculum don't seem to understand. You'll never see a video game being advertised as being easy. Kids who do not like school will tell you it's not because it's too hard. It's because it's boring. Think about that. Think about the students playing their video games and how they use that. And they go through these video games very, very successfully. Not because it's hard, but because they can figure it out and it's not boring.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, we need to get students engaged, get them excited about learning. I love that. All right, so now we are going to post in the chat the post-workshop survey. Please fill that out. We'll send out the certificates on Wednesday. And then if you have any questions, you can raise your hand, or we do have a couple that are, I know we have a couple questions that I wanted to get to that people had mentioned in the chat. But let's start out with our good friend who's with us today. We're so excited to have you here, Ferris. Let's see, you should be able to unmute yourself now. There you go. Can you hear us?
Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much to Dr. Ray Lindley. I look up to him as one of the prominent gurus in the field of ELT and TESOL. So way to go. It was a great presentation. And I have a question that I want to expand on the question I posted in the group chat about developing curriculum. You know, there's a large misalliance between the publishers, the school, and the teachers, and also students. The publishers publish the book, the schools buy it, and the teachers are thrown the book to teach. And unfortunately, the students are the recipient of that chain, and they are displeased with what they get because the content is largely not really aligned with the real world setting. And most of the times I see frustration on their face. That's the first question: how to address the misalliance between the publishers, the school, the teachers. And my second question is, you know, in some countries, for example, in Uzbekistan, we have teachers who are specialized in primary school, in junior school, in higher school. So they are specialized in with certain grades of students. And when the teacher comes to teach, let's say grade 9, they're completely unaware and oblivious of what stages the students have gone through. And they could probably set high goals and ambitions for the students, which might be unreachable. So my question is how to deal with this situation when the students reach the final stages of their schooling, when they are completely unprepared to really reach the final goals before graduating from the school. Is there any remedy for this phenomenon? I hope my questions are clear. Thank you.
No, they're very clear. First of all, let me talk about publishers. What do you think the main goal of a publisher who is trying to sell you a textbook is? What do you think is the publisher's main goal?
Well, to me, they have to publish something worthwhile that could intrigue both students and the teachers.
Okay, well, okay, let's say they have that wonderful, but what's the bottom line for a publisher? How does a publishing company exist?
Well, they
By
have to profit.
by selling textbooks, okay, or whatever it is they're selling. So number one, that's where I made the point earlier. Teachers have to take control. If teachers have, through all of these methods we've talked about, if teachers develop a curriculum, when Mr. or Miss Publisher comes into your school and says, here's a textbook, here's all you need, I think the responsibility of the school then is to say, here's our curriculum. Show us how your materials help us to teach this. That's
Great
key.
point.
And you see that's really important. When, as I said, when I was working at the Department of Education, I was president of the National Association of Textbook Administrators. So I got to deal with all of these textbook publishers. And we got past this business about selling. Sure, they want, but if they want to sell textbooks, they have to listen to what the schools or the districts are saying. Here's what we teach. Show us how you can help us teach this. And I just say to all of you who are teachers, get some guts, if you will. Pardon, you've got to get some guts. And when that publisher comes in, you say, oh, that's very nice. Thank you. It's a pretty cover and it looks like it's got pretty pictures in it. But let me see how you can demonstrate. And publishers here in the United States have to demonstrate. On page 72, we cover this subject. On page 83, we cover this. We have this video series that covers that subject. And so, you know, you have to get some ability to say, here's what we do, here's who we are, you show us how you can do this. Now, the second part of your question, Ferris, had to deal with, let's say, a ninth grade teacher. It's only a 9 through 12 school and has absolutely no sense of what went on before grade 9. That's where, again, I think we as educators have to get together. Unfortunately, I think this is especially true in grade 12 going into colleges and universities sometimes. And Dr. Jake and I have both been college professors. So we know that sometimes here's what you need to know in college or university with very little attention. So there's where I think the sixth grade teacher, or the 8th grade teacher needs to go to that 9th grade teacher and say, hey, would you tell me what you're doing in grade 9? So that I can help prepare students to be ready for what you're doing. There's got to be some cross-fertilization there. And this is hard and it takes time. But if we really want to help students be educated, we've got to spend the time to do that.
And there's a good question online as a follow-up, Dr. Ray. Before I get to that, I can see that Ferris has a nickname, Sir Ferris from Wafaa Khalid Bashir. I like that nickname,
Ooh.
Sir Ferris.
Really?
Yeah.
Frederick
Frederick asks a question, what do you do when the curriculum is already set up by the government? And that is pretty common in some of the countries that we go to.
Right, it is. And especially we know that in the Arab countries that Arab language, Arabic studies, Arabic history, they're all set up by the government. Make sure that all 12 grades understand what happens at each grade level. You don't have the choice. You have to teach that, and in some cases, the other subjects, but make sure there's good understanding for everybody, kindergarten or uh, pre-K or whatever you start with, through grade 12, you all understand if it's dictated by the government, okay, that's fine. Then we better understand whatever happens at each grade level. Oh, you're asking a question that should have been covered last year. So, but let me go ahead and respond to your question so that you can understand what happened. And also, next year you're going to be studying this. This will make more sense to you at that, that kind of thing.
What about using integration a little bit more if they're
Of course, has to. It has to. Because if we're going to make learning meaningful, when we hear kids say education is boring, probably is we haven't integrated it into what their lives are right now.
And I think what we've also found in countries where it's a required curriculum is that's the minimum that the government is requiring. And so often schools will implement a curriculum that is going to exceed what is required by the government and in effect meet the requirement, but also be able to provide a very quality education. We have a question from Ezekiel. If you want to unmute yourself, you should be able to do that now. Let's hear your question. Right, maybe he doesn't want to ask a question. Let's go with Ayman. Ayman, you're unmuted. Be great if we could see you too, Ayman.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I've met again. And also, I was privileged to study the same topic on the raised hands from 2006, 2008 in Cairo with AIC. I guess.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't know if the
that's a long time ago.
Yes, of course. Along these 10 years from I started studying this topic with you, Dr. Ray, can you just from your wisdom, words of wisdom, as you say, can you explain to us what has changed since then, especially in the generations? And you can add also the one more obstacle, which is the new generations and their boredom from everything due to the reels, screens, and so on. How can we face this challenge in addition to the second language barrier here in the Middle East? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. First of all, I would suggest that the surgence of the internet and computers and technology has definitely affected education. It definitely affects how we are as classroom teachers. It definitely affects what we deliver. And then most recently, the introduction of artificial intelligence. And we have to be very careful to understand that a lot of students can learn things. In fact, for some reason, I have a Grammarly on when I'm writing something, and it will say, did you really want to say this, or do you mean this instead of that? So a lot of these things, just because of technology, are happening, and we have to keep up with that. And I've often said, and I still believe this, I think we're making a mistake when we, and I know some schools you can't choose because it's an administrative decision, when we tell students don't use the internet or don't bring your cell phones to class. We can teach students how to use them appropriately. And the third thing I would say, Ayman, is I think that a few years ago when we had the COVID and the school lockdown and everything, we had to find more creative ways of teaching, because we're used to having a classroom full of students who are supposed to sit there and be part of the activity and be part of the discussion and so forth. But when they're online, just as you're online now, I have to realize that how many ever you are, I think there's over 200 that I see here today. When we're online, we're communicating, and we don't often see. Some of you who I see your lives, I see your actions, I can read your faces. But most people you can't. So that changed. We had to learn how to make education a bit more personable to students, because you can't teach somebody something that he or she isn't ready to understand or to listen. So those would be the three things that I would say, Ayman, have made a big difference in education.
Another question, Dr. Ray, before I turn it over to Wafa, is about the hidden curriculum. How do we deal with the hidden curriculum when we are talking about this curriculum in general, and the scope and sequence?
Help me understand what you mean by hidden
A
curriculum.
hidden curriculum is often referred to as what is taught that is not necessarily planned. The culture of the school, the character development of students when we're teaching them respect and responsibility, and it just naturally comes through with the general culture of the school and the structure of the school.
Okay, okay. Well, I guess I don't call that a hidden curriculum. That's
Oh.
part of the curriculum. Culture is part of the curriculum.
Yep.
Responsibilities, student responsibilities, that's part of the curriculum. Student behavior, that's part of the curriculum. So I say, rather than thinking of that as extra, we make it part of.
Mhm.
And I think that early on, teachers need to establish a climate where they can tell students early on, here's how we operate in this class. Here's what we do. Here's how you can expect me as your teacher to treat you. Here's how I want you to treat me as your teacher. That's not hidden. That's obvious. And that is part of the curriculum, because if I find that students don't have the ability they haven't learned how to listen. That's why I said earlier on the language arts, listening is part of the curriculum. If they don't know how to listen, we can waste our time doing a bunch of stuff and they're not listening to us. So we need to teach them how to listen. We can test them on their listening skills. There are fun little games that you can play on listening skills.
Yeah, no, I think that's great.
Now, I don't know if I answered the question or not,
Uh-huh.
but as I understood the question, that's how I answered it.
Yeah. I think another question that someone mentioned earlier was about integration. Why is integration important when we're talking about curriculum? Why should an English teacher try to teach some social studies concepts? And why should a social studies teacher teach some math concepts or some science concepts?
It's a matter of respect. Dr. Jake and I have different backgrounds in our teaching careers. He was a science teacher. This is in high school, and I was an English and speech teacher in high school. But I want you to know that I respect his knowledge of science, and sometimes I will have to ask him a question about something that crossed maybe I'm in a school and there's some scientific concept I totally don't understand. And believe it or not, there are a few times when Dr. Jake will write something to me and I get to correct his spelling or his grammar. That's respect for each other. And yes, because if we really respect, I used to say, and I believe this to be true, I could take my very best English teacher when I was principal. I could take my very best English teacher and put him in a science class, give him the curriculum, and he could do a pretty good job, because he understood teaching. And that's why this cross-fertilization of subject matters is so important, is that you understand and respect. And I think I've shared with you the story when I was principal, and I'm sorry if I've shared this too many times, but I was doing a teacher evaluation in my social studies teacher class that was US history class. He was writing on the board and writing this concept and this concept. And he said, some of these words might be spelled incorrectly, but you can learn to spell in the English class. Oh my goodness. That's not respect for the whole thing. So that's one of the reasons why integration is how they relate. I can learn much better if something relates to some reading that I've done. I'm currently reading a series of books, and I'm respecting so much things in World War II that I had never understood before, because I'm reading books about it. And even though that's not my background, I'm respecting it because I'm broadening my knowledge to a different area.
And I think with that, Dr. Ray, I think it's also about being efficient and getting students excited. I liked what Rodena wrote, because learning should be holistic, and also students should feel that subjects are not isolated islands. That's so important.
True.
Yeah. Well, I think those are all the main questions that we have right now, and everyone has started to fill out the survey. We have most of the survey responses in. So Dr. Ray, do you have anything else final to say?
No, it's been a joy to be this. It's been a little longer than I apologize if we've gone over your time limit. I know, especially for Farouz, it's the middle of the night there where you are. And for most of you, it's late in Saturday evening. For Dr. Jake and me, we're early Saturday afternoon. So we've got most of the day ahead of us. So thank you for sticking with us. I hope this has been helpful to you, and tried very much, Farouz, to follow your request to make sure that there's something meaningful that you can operate with in this workshop. And we'll certainly make that our goal in our future workshops.
Well, thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day. And let us know if there's any way that we can help you and your teachers and your schools out. We'd be happy to do what we can. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.